Yeah, this show was a hard pill to swallow. See what I did there? Don't get me wrong, the cast recording alone caused a hell of an impression when it comes to the emotional scope in digesting the themes of the show, but the music and lyrics combined with the visual elements in this London premiere of Next to Normal, and dare I say, the perfect cast, elevate the experience and consequently the connection to and the understanding of the characters to new heights, which consequently bring you closer to them, which consequently makes it hurt so much more. And today we're going to talk about everything that hurts in this London production, which is basically the entire show. Anyway, laugh while you can. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, you might want to check out my next normal reaction video up here, because this video is a follow-up of my impressions on seeing the show live for the first time and how different that was to merely listening to the cast recording. And also welcome to the channel. Menace, what is it? First go watch my videos, then welcome. Gee, no pressure at all, but if you actually decide to browse around the channel and you like what you see, hit the subscribe button at any time so you don't miss any of the future content. And there's a lot of stuff coming up. You'll also find me on Patreon if you want to help me continue creating while getting some extra content here and there. Link below. Now, this video may contain minor spoilers, mostly related to acting choices and what things look like in this London production of Next to Normal. So if you'd like to avoid any spoilers before you see the show, come back once you've seen it, because we're gonna have a lot of stuff to talk about. Trust me, you're gonna want to talk to someone after seeing that. Alright, so it's time to get to why this production tugs at your heartstrings so hard it might actually rip them off and you die for a moment, metaphorically. Picture the scene. Oh, just look at the following images. I forgot I had images. The Domo warehouse, where the show is playing at the moment, is a relatively small theatre. For this production, the seats are organised in a semicircle, facing a stage in 2 levels. First floor, where all of the main action happens, serves as all of the environments: the house, the clinic, the hospital, etc, etc. It's also a revolving stage, which really adds to the chaos. The second level, and this is where it gets funky, is shared by Natalie's school, the actual second floor of their house, and the band. It's made up of glass walls, as you can see in the images, so all the action behind those walls, which is mostly just characters leaving the scene, and the band are almost always visible. And I have lots of thoughts about it, but I'll try to keep it brief. At first I was a bit bothered by it, because catching characters leaving the scene through the corner of my eyes and having the band so prominently in the scenes was a little bit distracting, I'm not gonna lie. But that was only when I was sitting at the same level as the second floor. Sitting in the stalls, that didn't bother me at all. Thinking about it later on though, those glass walls are a really nice metaphor for how deeply intrusively we'll examine these people's lives. All their deepest, darkest feelings exposed, always visible. Which is also valid for how the music helps you dissect what those feelings are, right? So in a way, the band plays a part in reinforcing that metaphor by exposing the character's emotions through song. So it's sort of like you have 2 glass walls, the actual glass walls and the band. Might be reaching too far here. In any case, it's a pretty cool idea that I've learned is quite different from the original production. So kudos London team. That second level also offers one of the most haunting scenes of the entire show for me. Oh, it happens right after Diana goes through her shock treatment. These white panels come down and we can see Gabe's silhouette behind them. Diana is looking up from the first floor as Gabe puts one hand on the panel and disappears from her memory. What? Then he briefly sings a couple of lines. I think "I wish I were here," I can't remember exactly which. And you're just sitting there like... Having that visual representation of the result of her treatment was stunning. No, you guys, seriously, you have no idea. Absolutely haunting. The rest of the staging and lighting is nothing out of the ordinary, really. Although I was quite impressed with how much use you can make out of a kitchen island. Seriously, they're eating on it, dancing on it, standing on it, having shock treatment on it. The true star of the show is that kitchen island. But one of the coolest things for me in this production were the projections. They seem to mirror Diana's thoughts and emotions. They will fill up the entire room with both literal images like mountains when she's singing "I Miss the Mountains," or pills when she's taking her medicine, but also symbolic, abstract images like chemical shapes moving when she's not feeling well, or flowers blooming when she goes through the treatment to forget her painful memories. It was a very enticing way to make the audience connect to the characters even further by making us feel like we're literally inside their heads. I thought that was very clever and sensitive, and leads me to why the show caused so much emotional damage. I'm sure many people see themselves in the characters in the show, or relate to their mental health struggles on some level, or know people who are or have been in similar situations. But even if that's not the case, there is no way for you to sit there watching this production and not at some point feel like part of this family being sucked into the black hole that Diana, the mother, becomes. Diana is being played by the fantastic Caissie Levy and covered by the also fantastic Caroline Maitland. Seriously, I am madly in love with those women after seeing them perform. So if I were to briefly explain the progression of the experience of seeing this live, I'd say it was all about witnessing Diana develop into this great dark force that pulls everyone into its orbit, fictional characters and audience alike, to the point it gets so strong you can't help but feel part of it all. Therefore, you desperately hope they can find some healing or mending or peace at least, because by the end you sort of need it to. And it's interesting to think about it because even though you can very much tell that Diana is the main character in the cast recording, it feels much more about her when you're actually seeing the show, because obviously she's not present in the scenes only when she's singing, which is the case of the cast recording, but there are also all of these uncomfortable, desperate moments when she's having an episode or doing something completely unhinged because her illness took the best of her, that I didn't get with the cast recording, but that made her arc so much more heartbreaking. At the very start of the show, for example, there's this scene where she's making sandwiches, which should be a normal, simple task, right? That escalates so quickly and suddenly that you barely have time to realize what's happening and how she's now completely lost control of herself. And that scene felt very meta, like a metaphorical summary of the chaos that we are about to witness, but that is also very distressing to watch. You know, how quickly someone can go from being okay to being totally broken. And it was those moments that I was missing in the cast recording that made all the difference, helping me truly understand their pain in a way that was almost uncomfortably personal. So this show makes great use of the power of proximity in theatre, as well as a beautiful book to connect the audience to those people on stage. I also really love how the show starts with this false sense of happiness, with Diana all smiles and cuddles with her husband, because we don't know the truth yet. We don't know Gabe is actually dead. But if he is there, that means she's not fine. And it's just beautiful how your perspective of the character completely shifts as soon as you find out that she was never okay to begin with, even though it looked like that. Of course, that illusion is quickly destroyed by the end of the opening song and the sandwiches. Oh, the sandwiches. But it's a really nice choice they made to start by fooling the audience. I almost wish I hadn't listened to the cast recording before going to see the show, because that revelation would have been no! One thing I have to admit I hadn't thought about that much before seeing the show was how hard everything is on Natalie. And it's so heartbreaking when you realize she is in self-destructiveness mode throughout, not only because she feels neglected by her parents, but also because she's so afraid of getting ill like her mother that she doesn't allow herself to be happy. And that's obviously very clear in Perfect For You reprise, where she's still trying to convince Henry that it's not a good idea to be with her because, quotation marks, she might end up crazy. They really did a great job with the character arcs and the motivations for this show. It feels very real and accurate, although I do wish they had played a bit more into Natalie's unhingedness rather than just the anger. And maybe this was a direction choice or an actor's choice, I don't know. But most of her sarcastic comments don't really land because they just come out angry. And please, we desperately need some comic relief. So that's one note I would make for the future life of the show. So there are all of these elements that bring you closer to the action, which in this case can be pretty intense, especially when they're being graphic about the consequences of Diana's decisions. And that's why it was so hard to brush off the show after. So you have all of this sensory stimulation, music, props, stage magic, projections playing a part, along with the tenable interpretations of the plot and lyrics, in convincing you that 1, this family is not well, 2, you're now part of it, and 3, giving you a moral crisis because you're enjoying the technical elements in the music so much, while your new family is literally destroying themselves in front of your eyes. So basically, everything is perfectly placed to hurt you. Haha! Funny. Watching an interview the other day with Tom Kitt, the composer of the show, about this London premiere, he confirmed there wouldn't be any changes to the orchestration. All the music should sound exactly like the cast recording. So I'm not sure if it was the fact that it was a live band and I could feel the vibrations of the music, like physically, or the fact that for this production the band feels just as much part of the action as the cast, or if those electric performances are to blame. But the music felt proper rock and roll live. It was a different energy completely. Well, not completely, because I was still banging my head with the cast recording, but it was a different energy. The drums were a secondary main character for me, to the point I actually kept getting distracted and had to remind myself that I shouldn't be watching the band the whole time. And there was this almost savage, primal quality to the performances as well, that paired beautifully with the intensity of the sounds, making the whole piece even more haunting than it was when I had only the music to go by. Good God, each song was like being punched in the stomach, time and time again. And I should have been ready for it, and yet, I'll be honest, it was only hearing the music live that I realized how much anger there is in the show, and I'm gonna enjoy this phase of seeing shows that I only reacted to the cast recording before so much. Don't even get me started. If all I've said so far wasn't enough to prove that the show was painful as hell, the cast certainly seals the deal. The combination of individual talent in this is just unfair to any other show ever. As some of you may know, I watched the Benjamin Button musical earlier this year, and I completely fell in love with Jamie Parker, who was playing Benjamin back then and plays the father in this production of Next to Normal. Like, seriously, if you can Google the guy, Google the guy. His acting skills are phenomenal. Truly one of those actors that hypnotize you with their performance. So seeing him again so soon after finding out he exists and in such an incredible show as this production of Next to Normal was an absolute treat. I'm not even joking. His acting through song skills make you feel grateful for just being in his presence. I'm just saying. Then there's Caissie Levy, and also shout out to Caroline Maitland, because the both of them exceeded my expectations on so many aspects. Caissie's Diana, despite sounding as unhinged as the cast recording Diana, has a profound despair to her, but also lots of anger. But most of the time it sort of feels like she's mad at herself for not being well, which is quite interesting because it means she still has a profound connection to her family that she wants to maintain, but she doesn't know how to cut the connection to her dead son, or the grief that his death caused, more like it. Obviously, that maybe original Diana was the same, but I just couldn't grasp that with the cast recording only. But I think even the vocal difference between them sets a different tone. Original Diana sounds like she's making a massive effort to even speak. She sounds extremely fragile and defeated by the state she's in, with the cracks in her voice and everything. While Caissie's Diana sounds angrier. It's easy to tell she hates the state she's in. I would also like to mention the difference between Caissie Levy and Caroline Maitland's performances, because it was beautiful to see how two super talented actresses can bring so much meat to a character that it actually feels like you're watching two different shows, because their approach is so unique. Caroline, even because of her physicality, she's smaller and skinnier than Caissie. She looks way more fragile, and she uses that in her favor by creating a Diana that seems to be less capable of taking the hit, not just physically but emotionally. And what was really interesting about the cover performance is that Caroline started the show way happier, way more joyful than Caissie did. And it kind of threw me off at first. It felt wrong. Why are you so happy? This is too much happiness. Diana is not supposed to be smiling and cracking jokes. But as you watch the show progress, you keep wanting to go back to that moment when she was, or seemed to be, so happy. And it makes her character development so much more painful, because you can still remember how happy she was at the very start. So to me, there was a bigger contrast between the very first moments of the show Diana and the ending Diana that added a new layer to the show. So it was really interesting to see two amazing performers bring their own ideas to this character. And last but not least, I have to mention this production's Gabe, Jack Wolfe. who was the biggest surprise to me. Who even is Jack Wolfe? I had no idea. Now I'm a fan. He brought this softness to the character that made me both more sympathetic towards him and creeped out at the same time. Somehow. It's the contrast between how sweet he sounds when Diana is remembering him, or rather imagining him, and how morbid he can be trying to convince Diana to kill herself. And Jack navigated that like a true pro. Plus incredible vocals, some very rock and roll game moments there. I'm Alive was just... And the synchrony between Jack and Caissie, oh, sparks flying. In a modern sun way, don't be creepy. The cast and director here was truly blessed. It's very funny that watching the show, the ending had a different effect on me. Probably because of everything I just said about how much harsher the show feels in comparison to just listening to the cast recording. But I didn't feel hopeful or like there was a bright side to anything once it was done. It was an extremely melancholic ending, like something broke that can't ever be fixed but will have to be replaced instead. That bittersweet taste that feels more bitter because you know something was lost forever along the way. Of course, we could see that loss as an opportunity for the characters to reinvent themselves, you know, be reborn from the ashes, which I guess involves some hope. But everything up until then is so difficult to watch and so gloomy that when they sing their last line, "There will be light," you're sitting there trying to see the light through your tears. But it's all just blur. Okay, that was too metaphorical. You know, their recovery feels so distant from where they are at the end of the show that it's hard to visualize it. So it feels quite hopeless at first. God, that's depressing. And I didn't really feel like that with the cast recording. I really loved the whole "we need some light" line. I do remember crying a little bit as well. And it did feel like they were going somewhere where they would find healing eventually. So yeah, I guess ignorance is bliss. Not having the full picture actually worked out in this case and made the ending hurt less, I guess. But there you go. It was harder than I thought it would be, but I am so glad I got to see the show twice, especially because of how important it was at the time and encouraging the writing of shows that are more grounded in reality and more aware of human struggles. I personally love the contrast between a very dramatic book, very energetic music, and the natural lightness of musical theatre as a genre as well. That combination for me is the perfect recipe to an amazing show. Did you enjoy this video? Then make sure to leave your like and your comments below, and I'll see you next time to conquer the world of musical theatre. Keep singing. Ciao!